So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, that's right, I am reviewing Gladiator II. So, let's get into it, shall we? Gladiator 2 is, of course, the sequel to, you guessed it already, the first Gladiator, which released in 2000. That's right, Gladiator released 24 years ago now. And Ridley Scott directed that film, and he returns to direct the sequel. However, Russell Crowe is no longer in the lead role. He no longer is in this, well, he can't be in the sequel. A little spoiler there for the first Gladiator in case you haven't seen it. But if you hadn't seen the first Gladiator, you've had your chance, you know. If you wanted to watch it, you would have seen it already. So yes, Russell Crowe, of course, isn't back for the sequel, but Paul Mescal, who is probably best known for starring in such things as Normal People, After Sun, and All of Us Strangers, stars in the lead role alongside supporting performances from Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, you know, the Mandalorian himself, Joseph Quinn, which many people might know from the last season of Stranger Things, and Connie Nielsen as well, who was in the first film. I'm pretty sure she's the only returning cast member from the first film in this film. And I was both very excited for this film and also very worried. Now, the reason I was very excited is because it's Ridley Scott directing a Gladiator sequel. Just that one sentence in itself fills me with so much excitement, because the first Gladiator is a masterpiece. It's absolutely brilliant. But I was worried because it's Ridley Scott directing, and Ridley Scott hasn't made a great movie, at least for my money, since The Martian, which came out in 2015. He hasn't made a great film for 9 years. You know, he made The Last Duel in, I think, 2021, and Last Duel is a good film, but it's not a great film. And his last film, Napoleon, I know there's some people who are out there who really like it, and if you do, I'm super glad for you. You know, my brothers actually really like that film, but I really didn't like it. I struggled to watch that film in the cinema, and I was worried going into this film that I was going to have the same sort of film watching experience as I had watching Napoleon. And I was also worried it was going to feel a bit like House of Gucci. Like House of Gucci, I enjoy watching, but it's not a great film. I wouldn't even say it's a good film. It's okay at best. And I was slightly worried as well that this film's going to feel like House of Gucci meets Gladiator, which is not really what you want from a Gladiator sequel. So yeah, I was worried about this film because Ridley Scott hasn't made a great film, again, in my opinion, for 9 years since The Martian, which is a great film, by the way. It's a really great film. But at the same time, I was excited about it because it's the Gladiator sequel. You've got a great cast with Denzel Washington in there, you know, two-time Academy Award winner Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal in his height of fame. He's in everything right now, and he's in this film. And Paul Mescal, who doesn't usually do any big budget movies. I think this is his first big budget film, because the stuff he starred in before this is low budget, like After Sun or All of Us Strangers. They're not big budget movies. They're good films, very good films, but they're not big budget films. And he was starring in this one. I thought, okay, that's an interesting casting choice, to say the least. Plus, the trailers for this film sold me. I don't care what anybody says. I thought both trailers for this film, I think there's been 2 trailers out there, the teaser trailer and the official trailer. Both trailers for this film, or both trailers that I saw for this film, I loved. I didn't even care that the first trailer had a rap song in there, because I usually hate it when trailers use a rap song for the music of the trailer. But I didn't even care on that one, because I just thought all the visuals looked like, classic Ridley Scott. That was what I was hoping for going into this film yesterday at the cinema. And the Google plot synopsis for Gladiator 2 goes as follows. Years after witnessing the death of Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius must enter the Colosseum after the powerful emperors of Rome conquer his home. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, he looks to the past to find his strength and honour needed to return the glory of Rome to its people. And that's pretty much all you need to know about Gladiator 2 before seeing it. And honestly, I was surprised by how good this film was. I unexpectedly really liked it. And I'm not saying it's as good as the first Gladiator, but I also don't think that's a fair comparison. You know, comparing this film to the first Gladiator is like comparing any new Star Wars film to The Empire Strikes Back. Or it's like comparing any new Jurassic World film to the first Jurassic Park, or the Hobbit trilogy to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's just not a fair comparison. So yes, this isn't as good as the first Gladiator. It doesn't have the same depth as that film. And the first Gladiator has his confidence in his storytelling. It feels like Ridley Scott is directing the film. It directed that film with confidence. Like he wanted to direct the first Gladiator in the most grand way possible. And you don't get that feel with this film. But I was watching this film in the cinema. I was watching Gladiator 2 in the cinema yesterday. And I had to pinch myself halfway through the film. And it's not a short film, it's about 2 hours and a half. I think it's actually literally right on that runtime. It's 2 hours and a half exactly. And I had to pinch myself halfway through the film because I couldn't believe how much I was into it. How much I was into all the character dynamics, all the political stuff. And how much I actually cared about Paul Mescal's character, Lucius. Because I went into the film worrying that I wasn't going to like Paul Mescal, because some film pundits that I follow online who have already seen the film and who already reviewed it, they said they weren't big fans of Paul Mescal. I thought he was great in the film. I mean, yeah, he's not Russell Crowe, but no, Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe. He's one of the best actors to come out of the past however many years, of the past how many decades, you know. He's an absolutely insanely good actor, and Paul Mescal isn't Russell Crowe, but I think he fills Russell Crowe's shoes rather well. I loved his ruggedness and the stoic nature of his performance, and I totally bought into him in the lead role. And I'm not a big fan of Paul Mescal. I know some people like are die-hard fans of, which I don't quite understand, but then again, I haven't seen Normal People, which is the thing that sort of exploded his career. But I have seen him in After Sun, and I have seen him in All of the Strangers, and I think he's good in both of those films, but I don't think he's great in both of those films. But I think he's great here. I loved his performance in this film, and I didn't expect to. Again, he's not Russell Crowe, but he's doing a good job. And actually, I would say he's doing a great job in this film. And I'm going to get onto the performance. I'm going to get onto more of the other performances in this film later on in this review. But something I really loved about this film was how epic it felt. This at times, I'm not saying it completely 100% felt like classic Ridley Scott, but at times it felt like classic Ridley Scott. That Ridley Scott we saw who directed the first Gladiator, which, by the way, feels weird to say. I said the first Gladiator, the phrase the first Gladiator quite a few times in this review, and it feels weird to say that because, for 24 years we haven't had a Gladiator sequel, but here we are, it's 2024, and weird things have happened. But going back onto what I was saying, here in this film, a lot of it feels like classic Ridley Scott, and it is epic, and I mean epic with the capital E, and I loved how so much of it looked like it was done practically. I mean, yes, there's CGI in this film, and at times it is noticeable, but I just really admired it for the scale. And it's a $300 million budgeted film, and the budget is on the screen in the way you want it to be. You know, I love when a film has a big budget and you can see the budget when you're watching the film, and I felt like I could see the budget when I was watching the film yesterday, and I loved the scale and the action sequences and the fight sequences have this grit to them. Like, you genuinely believe you are watching these two gladiators fight, or you genuinely believe you're watching these two armies clash at one point. Like, the film opens with this, again, going back to that word, epic action set piece, which I was going, wow, this is really well done. I'm kind of amazed by how I'm believing in all of this. Like, there's people getting shot by arrows, someone getting stabbed, and I genuinely believe that these people are actually getting stabbed, which sounds like an easy thing, but it's a much difficult thing to do than you might realise, to actually make all that believable and to make the Roman aesthetic of the film believable as well. But this film does that seamlessly. And yeah, the fight sequences, I mean, every time someone gets stabbed or punched or hit to the ground, you feel it in this film. There's a visceral nature to those fight sequences, which is something you got in the first Gladiator and you get in the sequel. And that was particularly the case in a fight sequence between Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal's characters, which I loved. I was sat there watching that action sequence, properly gripping the edge of my seat. And, you know, the action sequences and the fight sequences in this film are nail-biting, quite literally. There was certain sequences in this film where I didn't realise it until after the sequence had ended, but I was biting my nails. And I was biting my nails quite rapidly at that. Plus, the musical score by Harry Gregson Williams, yes, I didn't say Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer didn't return to the score for this film, you know, which is a bit unfortunate. But I think Harry Gregson Williams does a great job, you know, does a great job stepping into Hans Zimmer's shoes. I mean, I think he's one of Hans Zimmer's students anyway. You know, like Ludwig Göransson, who does a lot of the scores, like The Mandalorian, and the score for Oppenheimer. He was one of Hans Zimmer's students. And there's John Powell, who did the score for House of the Dragon and Chicken Run and stuff like that. He's one of Hans Zimmer's students. And I think Harry Gregson Williams is as well. And Harry Gregson Williams' score for this film, again, it adds to this, I'm going back to the word, epic quality to the film. I loved the score. Literally from the get-go, the score starts playing, and I couldn't believe how much it got me immersed in what was going on. And I love how the film opens with this sort of not cartoon, that's not the right way of phrasing, this sort of hand-drawn animation that recaptures what happened in the first Gladiator. I was watching that and I felt like I was about to watch something special. And I'm not going to say this film is something special. I do have my criticisms here and there. I think the Emperor's characters could have been better. I wish we got to know more about them. And I don't think it gets into... I think this is quite surface level film. I don't think there's much depth to what's happening. And again, it doesn't reach the height of the first Gladiator, but it was never going to. You know, so many people have this love of the first Gladiator, which won't be taught by this one because of how long they've loved the first Gladiator. You know what I mean? Like, the first Gladiator, as I've said, I think twice already in this review, but I'm going to say again now, came out 24 years ago now. The chances are, if you grew up watching the first Gladiator, it has been in your life for, over 20 years now, at least. I mean, it came out 24 years ago. Assuming you went to go watch at the cinema, the chances are you're approaching 30 years old, and this film has probably been in your life for as long as you can remember. The first Gladiator has. So this film was never going to top the first Gladiator. It's like when people say, oh, the new Star Wars film isn't as good as the original trilogy. And I'm like, yeah, because it was never going to be, because of the amount of love you have for the original trilogy. So, obviously, it's not going to be as good as the first Gladiator. Obviously. But I do think it's a worthy follow-up. And I loved how much it connected to the first film. It felt like a proper sequel, but also its own story. Although saying that, I do think you need to watch the first Gladiator in order to understand this film. I don't think this is one of those films. I don't think this is one of those sequels which you can go into having not seen the first film. But I do also think it's its own story, stands on its own 2 feet, is well directed, not directed with the same confidence that the first one was directed, but I do think it is well directed, well written, because I really got into it, again, far more than I expected to, with great performances all around. Denzel Washington, he's Denzel Washington, he's brilliant in this film, as is Pedro Pascal. as is Connie Nelson, and as are the Emperors, even as are the ones who play the Emperors in the film, should I say. Even if I didn't love those characters, all the performances are brilliant. I love the aesthetic. I loved how much I got immersed in the film, and I just really, really liked it. Like, I came out of the film and I was like, that felt like a Gladiator sequel, And Ridley Scott, I looked this up on the way home after watching the film yesterday. He's 86 years old, and he's directing films like this. And I also heard this in an interview, that apparently his film only took 51 days to shoot, which is mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing when you look at the scale of this film. But it just makes me like the film all the more. I found it, as Russell Crowe's character Maximus says in the first Gladiator, "Are you not entertained?" And my answer to that, when it comes to this film, is I was. And I was thoroughly entertained at that. Yeah. I didn't love it, but I really liked it. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Gladiator 2, I'm going to give it a 7.8 out of 10. I'm not going to give it an 8 out of 10 because I didn't love it, but I'm okay that I didn't love it. Maybe I will love it as time goes on, because I didn't love the first Gladiator the first time I saw it, but then the more I thought about it and the more I watched it, the more I did, it did grow in my appreciation, and I ended up loving that film. So maybe, and I will go and watch it again in the cinema. I don't know when, but I'm planning to watch it again in the cinema. Maybe when I watch it again, I will feel a greater appreciation for it. Or maybe when I go and watch it again, it doesn't work for me nearly as much as it did the first time. But going off my first experience, again, to come back on what I was saying before, I was just so into it. And that's really what I wanted. Because the majority of Ridley Scott's films over the past however many years, I have not really felt into. I haven't really felt compelled by the story or engaged by the story. But this time I did. I did think it was well written. And yeah, there were some parts of the film which make absolutely no sense, like sharks being in the Colosseum. But I could get past all that because it was all so thoroughly entertaining and so good. I was just so into it. Whether it's through the performances, which I do think elevate the film, and I do think the film wouldn't have been the same without the likes of Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, and Pedro Pascal, and so on and so on and so on. But they are in the film, so, they do change it for the better. Or whether it was through the musical score by Hygwix and Williams, which adds to the intensity and epic feel of the film. Or whether it's the film's epicness or its fight sequences, which are so well done, which really Scott doesn't even use worst of films, like his Robin Hood film, which wasn't particularly good. Even that film has some pretty epic sequences in, and Ridley Scott brings his epic directing to this film, and I really, really, really liked it. I wanted to love it, but I'm okay that I didn't at the same time, because I do think it's a good follow-up to the first Gladiator, And I was afraid I wasn't going to say that, but I'm so happy that I am. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Gladiator 2 is a 7.8 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Gladiator 2, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose that's it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Just about got this one on. Bye.